Hi, this is Constance Towers, and welcome to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson welcoming you to a brand new edition of TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is happy to be back with you live, so to speak, after taking the last couple of weeks off. Michael Bell will join us in our second hour. Michael Bell, one of the most prolific voice actors in film and animation over the past 40 years. We can easily fill the entire 2-hour program this week, listing all of Michael's credits and still only scratch the surface. We'll talk about his long association with Hanna-Barbera, plus we'll ask Michael about some of his on-screen acting credits. Among other things, he was Les Crowley, Bobby Ewing's banker, on Dallas. Michael Bell will join us in our second hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. A lot has happened over the past few weeks. We have lost quite a few icons in the world of entertainment since Thanksgiving, including Renee Auberjonois of Deep Space Nine and Benson and Boston Legal, Ron Liebman of Kaz and Angels in America, Shelley Morrison of Will and Grace and The Flying Nun, and Carol Spinney, Oscar the Grouch, and Big Bird from Sesame Street. We will pay tribute to Shelley Morrison later on in this hour and to Carol Spinney in our second hour. We hope you'll stay tuned for both of those segments. In the meantime, we'll open up this segment by paying tribute to another entertainment figure who left us recently, that being Arthur Marks. Arthur Marks, the last surviving producer and director of the original Perry Mason. Arthur Marks passed away on Wednesday, November 13th at the age of 92. Except for a few weeks in 1958, Arthur Marks was behind the scenes one way or another for all 9 seasons of the original Perry Mason. He was the showrunner the last 5 years of Perry Mason, and he directed 76 episodes of the original Perry Mason, more than any other director. You might recall that Arthur Marks visited us twice on TV Confidential, once in 2015 and again in 2017. In 2015, Art paid tribute to his friend Leonard Nimoy. Among Nimoy's many appearances in film and television before Star Trek, he played one of the suspects in the Perry Mason episode, The Case of the Shoplifter's Shoe. I understand that you knew Leonard Nimoy long before you worked together on Perry Mason.
Yeah, we go back some distance, as a matter of fact. I think all the way to the early 50s, the middle 50s. I was an assistant director at Columbia Studios, and we did a number of serials. For Senator Sam Katzman was the producer, and he casted one of the shows. I don't remember whether it was Tarzan or one of those, but I remember vividly working with him. I think it was Billy the Kid. He played an Indian, and we became slight friends then. And through the years, we would bump each other at the Directors Guild or some affair. And it was like old home week. We were good friends.
Well, and again, that's the wonder of both the motion picture and the TV industry, because you work together for a close period of time, and then you part ways because you go to another project. But then you can bump into each other, and then you just pick up just like it was yesterday.
Well, the interesting thing about it, Ed, is that when you went through a production, let's say the Billy Kid serial. It was very hard work and long hours, and you were together for 25 days, and you got to know each other quite well. You got to know personally his problems, your problems. You rode on buses with him. You had lunch with him. So during those 25 days, it became a very close association. So consequently, when you see each other 2 years later, it's like it never passed. 2 years? What's 2 years?
Yeah, or maybe 52 years, but it's
maybe longer. That's true.
Yeah. Now, of course, the Shoplifter Shoe was a special show not only because it reunited you with Leonard, but it also reunited you with Margaret O'Brien, who you worked, who you got to know back when you were at MGM.
Well, a slight addition to that. Before that show, just before it, Leonard did a show called Broken Arrow. And he was an Indian in that. So I was the assistant director on some of those shows, not the show that he worked on, but I visited the set when he was working, and I said, you see, Leonard, you always go back to what you really are. Anyways, the Perry Mason show was a delight for several reasons for me, not only directing Leonard, but the idea of course, Margaret O'Brien. It so happens that when I was younger, and in those days, whatever the poem goes, I was in the production department. I worked in the production department at MGM Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And Margaret, of course, was a little girl then. This is now the 40s. And this is now 10, 12, 62, I think it was, with Leonard and
Margaret O'Brien.
Margaret O'Brien.
Yeah.
And so now she's a grown lady in her 30s, see? So I didn't know her well, of course, as a little girl, but of course I visited her set many times.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her what a joy it was to see her again and to direct her and to have her work with her.
We're talking to Arthur Marks. Arthur directed Leonard Nimoy in The Case of the Shoplifter's Shoe, an episode of Perry Mason that also featured Margaret O'Brien. Plus, as Arthur mentioned, he knew Leonard Nimoy for many years prior to that, back when they worked on serials at Columbia Pictures. Now, Shoplifter's Shoe, that was a good role for Leonard because, like every suspect in Perry, he had at least one scene where he got to cross-witch with Raymond, and even best Raymond.
Well, you're right. That was really the order of the day, was to have each suspect in the part that Leonard played to have a key scene before they ever appeared in courtroom.
And then, later on, Leonard got to ham it up a little bit at the end when, okay, this is a spoiler alert for those who have not seen the show. Yes. And so there are actually some people out there who may not have seen the Perry Mason show. But so I will not give away the ending. Don't
do that.
Okay.
It's always a joy for people to see a show and not know the ending,
Okay, let's just say Leonard got to ham it up a little bit at the end.
Well, let's say in the courtroom, which is a ardent work for a director because it's usually 2 or 3 days of filming in a courtroom, and you're doing a number of pages per day. So consequently, time is of essence. Setups for the camera is of essence, and so on. So you have to rely on actors who are reliable.
Yes.
Leonard was very reliable. He could always knew his lines. He was always prepared. He was the ultimate, to me, the professional. And
I understand that when he made the transition from actor to director, he was one of those directors, and I think you followed the same school yourself, Arthur, where you were not both you and Leonard were not obtrusive directors. You sort of you came prepared, and if the actors came prepared, they sort of directed themselves.
Yeah, as long as they were on the right track, Ed. You try to hammer those out before the production starts, and before the actors has a scene. You define what character he is. He gives you his feelings and what he thinks he is and what he's going and what direction, and you either agree or disagree, and you go in that direction. And generally, you want to go with an actor. An actor brings a lot to a character, and you want to take advantage of every inch of that because it's his whole life. An actor is his whole life. So when he brings a part to you on the stage, you hope that all his life is in that part. But and it generally worked out that way.
You mentioned some of the courtroom scenes on Perry. Just in general, I heard in another interview from a couple of years ago, one of the actors, Steve Franken, who worked on the show, he said his recollection was, because some of the courtroom scenes could run 20 or 30 pages, he recalled that some of the summations that Raymond had to give, those were filmed first. Was that the way it worked that you remembered, or would it depend on the show?
No, we didn't do that first.
Okay.
I don't know if there was a rule to that, but generally we tried to hold back something towards the latter part of shooting of that courtroom, so that there was kind of a climax to all that work, so that not only did the actors feel relaxed in doing that, but so did the crew, and the atmosphere was different.
Like you're building, like you're building to something.
Exactly.
Well, that's very unusual because a lot of times things are shot out of sequence. So it's nice if I'm following you correctly, it's nice to know that at least one way or another, you tried to make that moment where at least you're filming the resolution. You tried to make that as authentic, at least for the crew people, because that was your first audience.
Yeah, that wasn't a rule that happened on every show.
Yeah.
But I was a producer. I could do anything.
That's right.
No, but you try to utilize your setups so that if you had a full shot of the courtroom, you tried to do scenes 1, 16, and 27 at that area. So it was all lit and ready, and even though the costume machine had to be changed, you didn't have to relight a whole courtroom. So you try to knock off setups so that you had a coverage of that particular day.
And that particular day we're talking about is behind the scenes of the case of the shoplifter's shoe, which featured Leonard Nimoy. Arthur Marks is the producer of Perry Mason, and he directed 90 episodes of Perry Mason, including The Shoplifter's Shoe, which featured his friend Leonard Nimoy. And as you mentioned earlier, it was the fun thing for me watching that show, knowing that you knew him. It's just one of the many things that makes that show special.
Well, special for me because of Leonard and, of course, friendship, and, of course, of Margaret O'Brien. I mean, it was kind of a joy to me to be directing Margaret O'Brien after being a flunky little clerk in production office at MGM many years before. But it was kind of fun because, second of all, she was a movie star to me.
Yes.
And she didn't have a great deal of experience in the time of the way we shot television, meaning in a quicker tempo. So I was trying to, little kid gloves, more or less, trying to give her every inch I could as far as time was concerned. So consequently, I tried to give her breaks between her scenes so she wasn't, in a sense, hurried. And Leonard, of course, was very helpful in his scenes because Leonard was a pro. Leonard was always prepared, so it was easy with Leonard. And we kid around afterwards, behind the camera and all that business. But when it comes to the camera, it was work. We both did our job.
Arthur Marks, producer and director of the original Perry Mason, sharing a few memories of Leonard Nimoy, Margaret O'Brien, and Raymond Burr from his appearance on TV Confidential back in 2015. Arthur Marks passed away this past Wednesday, November 13th, at the age of 92. Arthur Marks joined us again in February 2017 as part of our tributes to Mike Connors and Art's longtime friend, Barbara Hale. We've talked about this before. You were kind enough to talk about this for my book. Obviously, you knew Barbara very well. You spent a lot of time with her during the 10 years you made the original Perry Mason, and I know that you stayed in touch over the years. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Yes, it's a terrible loss. Barbara was 94, I believe. A gentle, wonderful woman.
Gentle, wonderful woman, and I understand not only when she made the series, but throughout her life. I mean, she was very upbeat, positive, buoyant, loved a good joke.
She was a happy gal. I think she had a happy marriage and children that were beautiful, and life was good. She had a good attitude towards most things. It was really, I think Barbara stayed positive about even the bad times.
That is my understanding, and I've talked to, as you know, I had an opportunity to talk to quite a few actors on the original Perry Mason, and they pointed to how supportive Barbara was. One of those actors who made guest stars feel at home. I mean, made them feel like an extended part of that professional family.
Well, wherever Barbara worked, and I worked with Barbara long before Perry Mason.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with her when she was a starlet at RKO, and then was borrowed by Columbia to do a Western, and I was assistant director on that Western. So they threw her in with these motley people. Andre DeToss was the director, and Broderick Crawford. I mean, the roughest guys in the world. And she was always a lady and always lovely, and good actress, did her job.
A very good actress, did her job. The proof is in the pudding. Barbara Hale I believe she won 2 Emmy Awards for her portrayal of Della Street on the original CBS Perry Mason, as well as the NBC Perry Mason. Arthur Marks, he was one of the producers of the original Perry Mason. He also directed more episodes of the original Perry Mason than any other director. He's spending a few minutes talking to us about our friend Barbara Hale. You know, it's very interesting, Art, and I'm thinking aloud here, so bear with me. That's a dangerous concept.
I'm getting a little reverberation.
Okay.
Maybe that's your heart.
Yes, it is. It is my heart. But, it's interesting. Barbara died. This means what it means, but Barbara died within 2 days Mary Tyler Moore. A lot has been spoken about how Mary Tyler Moore played one of the first independent women. When you think about it, Della was very much an independent person. I mean, yes, she was always working with Perry and Paul Drake, but Della could handle herself in a lot of situations.
Well, Barbara was a very capable woman. I mean, she ran her family. She had 3 kids, and her husband had a business, and she co-worked with him on that, and then acted in the films, and had her date book, and reviews, and interviews, and she's a busy lady. Very busy. Very busy lady, very talented lady. A lot of people forget that Barbara originally wanted to be an artist. I mean, she went to art school, and she... back in Illinois, I think, yeah. Yeah, and my understanding is that she continued to do sketches and so forth, throughout her life. In fact, if I remember correctly, there was an oil painting that she did of Raymond that was used in one of the Perry Mason episodes. Well, I think that's true. She did a sketch. It wasn't a true portrait. It was a sketch. I forget which episode that was in, but it was used on screen.
Yes, it had a nice close-up, and she carried. I mean, when she held it to the camera, she had that loving smile.
Well, you have to understand that Barbara did 100,000 courtrooms. Mm-hmm. She was always at the desk with Perry Mason. But Barbara never said a word in court. Rarely did she have a scene. Once in a while, we broke that up. But so what did she do? Her little drawer in the courtroom of the desk was full of crayons, sketch pads, notes, bubble gum, just about everything. And every so often, Ray would put a snake in there. He would put a lizard in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, she was a very talented artist as well.
Very talented artist, and we're very fortunate that Arthur Marks, one of the original producers of Perry Mason, is spending some time talking to us about his friend Barbara Hale. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and I will just wish Barbara, God love her.
How are you doing otherwise?
How am I doing?
Yes.
Well, I lost another friend today, Mike Connors.
That's right, Mike, who was
Mannix.
He not only was Mannix, but his Perry Mason connection was that.
That's right, and also, you see, I've known Mike since he went to UCLA.
That's right. He played ball for Johnny Wooden.
Yeah, and we used to play volleyball together down at State Beach. I've known him a long time.
Yeah.
So I directed some of those, so it was fun being with him at an apex of his career too.
Well,
he was a fine man.
Very fine man. I was fortunate to talk to him a couple of years ago.
He was 90, I think 91.
He was 91. Barbara was 94. As we like to say in show business, they both had a good run.
Yeah, a good run, baby. That's what it is. Listen, we were all so fortunate to be in that era, you know?
Very much so. Very much so. And
I think the quality and the results are quite apparent.
And not only the quality and the results are quite apparent, Art, but the fact that your work continues to be discovered by new viewers. And I know this for a fact because Barbara told me that when I talked to her a couple of years ago, she said she's now getting letters saying, I'm watching the show with my grandchildren, and they're discovering you on Perry Mason.
Ed, I hear it all the time. I hear always say, gee whiz, it's so much fun to look back on those shows, and I told all my friends and my kids and whatever. And so it'll live forever.
Arthur Marks, the last surviving producer and director of the original Perry Mason, from a conversation about his friends Barbara Hale and Mike Connors that originally aired in February 2017 on TV Confidential. Arthur Marks passed away Wednesday, November 13th at the age of 92. To say that I could not have completed my book on Perry Mason without Art's help and support is a vast understatement. Art's recall of events from nearly 60 years before was amazing, and having heard Art's voice again this segment, I think you'll agree that he reminded me of a leprechaun whenever he spoke, full of vim and joy. We play our conversation with Shelley Morrison next on TV Confidential.
Story Salon is Los Angeles' longest-running storytelling venue. We have live shows every Wednesday in Studio City, as well as solo shows, podcasts, CDs, and several books. Los Angeles Daily News calls Story Salon Gemstones of Narrative, something new, funny, astonishing. Sunset Magazine says tales tall, tragic, and tantalizing. All of this makes Story Salon one of the most eclectic entertainment experiences available. You can learn more about us by going to our Facebook page or by visiting our website at www.storysalon.com.
C is for celebrate. And with that in mind, our friends at Shout Factory invite you to join host Joseph Gordon-Levitt and the residents of Sesame Street, human residents and monsters alike, to celebrate 50 years of learning, laughter, and love with the release of Sesame Street 50th Anniversary Celebration, available now on DVD through Sesame Workshop and Shout Kids. Familiar faces such as Roosevelt Franklin, Don Music, Sherlock Hemlock, and the amazing Mumford join celebrity guests Nora Jones, Nile Rodgers, Sterling K. Brown, Meghan Trainor, Patti LaBelle, and Elvis Costello in this heartwarming look at the groundbreaking series that changed the face of children's television. Bonus features in Sesame Street 50th Anniversary Celebration includes Elmo's World Celebration and 50 Years in 50 Seconds. Sesame Street 50th Anniversary Celebration, Sesame Street 50th Anniversary Celebration, available now on DVD through Shout Kids and Sesame Workshop. For more fun and learning, go to sesamestreet.org.
Accredited by Guinness World Records, welcome to Archival Television Audio Incorporated, a peerless TV soundtrack archive, preserving the audio from television's first 3 decades, the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, the golden and silver age of television.
For more information, go to atvaudio.com.
Ed Robertson, along with her friend Donna Allen Figueroa, who I understand has a new book out.
Yes, it's entitled Fall Again Beginnings. It's the first part of a 4-part contemporary romantic series set against the background of working actors.
Something that you know a thing or two about.
You write what you know, and I have been working in the business for several years.
It is not necessarily autobiographical, but it's based on...
Sure, many of the experiences that the actors in my book have, many have happened to me, many have happened to friends of mine. It's not, if you're looking for Valley of the Dolls, it's not, it's grounded in reality.
It is grounded in reality, and it's the first in a series.
Yes.
Called the Fall Again series.
Fall Again.
Which is available as a paperback as well as an ebook and in Kindle at fallagainseries.com.